And it's time for us to get into the newsroom, and this morning would like to look at national unity and our role as the media, members of the Fourth Estate, whether we have played our role effectively and what else we can do. Now, we had started off the show by asking you the question whether you feel that the media has done its bit and its role. And I'd just like to read some of the comments that have come through before I introduce the panel that I have here this morning. I have Stephen Migai, who says, not at all. Media coverage of ethnic press conferences to champion tribal agenda is still a shame. We also have Jimmy Gakio, who says, not really. I would give a score of 15%. Very dismal. They mostly report negative, although there have never been a platform to report positive, cause the reports what's on the ground: corruption, brutality, thuggery, etc. Let me just read a few more. We have Robi, Koki, who is part of the panel this morning, who says we need a concerted effort with stakeholders. So she's going to be telling us what that is all about. Reverend Harrison Kosgei says, yes, 78%, but 22% of media houses are totally biased. Their editorials should do something. Watching in Leso from Nandi County. So those are basically your comments. Keep them coming. I'll read them through and have them come through as we carry on. But now let me introduce the panel that we have this morning. And to my extreme left, we have Robi Koki, who is a lecturer at USIU in communication and journalism. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
We also have Jullie Masiga, who is a journalist. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And last but not least, we have Honorable Yusuf Hassan, who is a member of parliament for Kamkunji. But just for the benefit of those who might not know, he was also a journalist, and maybe still is a journalist. I don't know whether you quite ever put that hat down, but also a member of parliament. So let me start with the same question that we have been asking out there. And I'll start with you, Jullie, on your thinking or your take on whether we have so far done what we need to do to foster national unity as the members of the Fourth Estate.
Yeah, I think we need to ask ourselves, what is our role as media? Are we supposed to be fostering national unity or fostering anything? Or are we supposed to be informing, educating, and entertaining? Our role, I think, is to present the facts and to let people make their own decisions. I think when journalists go into the activism space and try and sway opinions, things can very quickly go south. For example, with our peace journalism post-2007 and 8, where we didn't really do our job because we were constrained by this whole notion that we need to maintain the peace. You can think about America post-9/11, where the journalists, the whole media machinery and industry was so emotional about what had happened that they were not being objective. They were just kind of like beating the drums of war. And later it turned out, depending on who you ask, there were actually no weapons of mass destruction. And when media gets into the space of trying to influence how people think, I think that's a very dangerous place to be. So in Kenya, I think what we need to do is stop being swayed by partisanship or being swayed by tribal alliances or our own personal feelings, and try and be more objective about how we present the news and give people both sides so they can make their own decisions. I don't think we should be actively in that space of trying to build cohesion, because who decides which cause is just? Is it a just cause? And what are we doing it for? This unity is to what? Unity is a good thing, but as a media, we're pushing it to what end? You know what I mean?
Okay, yes, and where we stand. Robi, your thoughts on that?
Okay, for me, I take the approach that media, yes, is there to inform, educate, but what information? You can't inform in a vacuum, and you cannot not have an agenda. That's basically what we're saying. And media per se, in its role, yes, if you're reporting hard news, you can go the way of reporting facts. But if you decide you're going to take the media advocacy approach and look at issues and decide this is an issue you want to publicize, this is an issue you want to give more traction, then I think media can play an important role in national unity. We cannot take it for granted, our role in society, because again, remember, we are the Fourth Estate, and the Fourth Estate exists to check what is going on. And if you exist for public interest and not just commercial, then one of the public interest issues in Kenya is actually national unity. So taking the media advocacy approach is more about putting people together, stakeholders together, not just the media. There are other people who are important in this area who think about the nation and the importance of people understanding their roles as Kenyans or building patriotism under issues that matter to us. Because let's be honest, Kenya has a robust governance system. We might not like the way it is being implemented. We have a constitution that is progressive, described as progressive. And that will not work in an environment where there is a lot of hostility or an environment where there is violence of all sorts of...
But like Julie mentioned, our job is basically to present the facts. If the environment is hostile, we're there to say that, yes, it is hostile and possibly even give context to why it is hostile. But how does that now take shape for us to, you know, ensure that we foster national unity?
Yes, you report facts, but like I said, if you just want to focus on hard news and commercial news, then you can argue that way. But if you want to focus on the trend towards where media is going, look at media houses like Quartz. They're online. They basically are thematic in nature. They address issues to the core. That means they do more research. They write more articulated articles about issues. People pay attention to them. Let's not even go very far. We have The Elephant, which is also a Kenyan-based kind of media house online. They look into depths of issues. And people today want to know, what is this national unity? What is the important issue? How should we look at this issue? So for me, I agree, yes, if it's commercial, you can report the hostility. But then again, if you want to look at it in terms of public interest and you're serving public interest, then that's the way to go.
All right. Mheshimiwa, your opening remarks in regards to that.
Well, first of all, I think we must put the media in the context of our reality. We are a fragile country. We are a new country by world standards, the history of nations. We are kind of multi-ethnic, multinational, and diverse. And therefore, it is not, we cannot be compared to many other countries. Maybe in the African context, we are similar. But in global terms, we have a lot of complexities and difficulties that journalists need to handle much more better.
And in a unique manner.
Than in other countries. And journalism is simply not about where, who, and what. This is what my sister is saying, in that you just report what happens, where it happens, and who has done it, and that's it. Journalism is about much more than that, particularly in a developing society. We need to know how and why it happened. And in that context, it is just not easy and simple to say, we will just report the facts as it were. And secondly, this idea that the media is neutral, is not biased, is a myth. We're all biased. We all come from different backgrounds and different positions when we come to the desk as journalists, as politicians, as professionals. And in the context of Kenya, that is what influences where we came from, influences our professional input. And in the case of Kenya, I think the media is too much focused on selling papers and television time. It is not putting too much time into the quality of the product, into the context of the product. And that is where you need to invest more. And thirdly, I think it is important to have an ethical journalism, where you make sure that while you're reporting about problems in a particular country, about corruption, about incompetence, you also as a journalist must set the standards that in your own personal integrity and also in your reporting, that you're ethical. For example, to say that because what sells, if it doesn't bleed, it doesn't sell is the famous adage.
If it bleeds, it leads.
If it bleeds,
it leads.
Yeah. It sells. Is the adage that is used to promote this idea that, of course, you're in business to make money. But whom are you making? You know, you must be you must be aware of the public that you are serving.
Allow me to interrupt a little bit there and just go back to what you've mentioned. And it is important to note that as much as we talk about media houses and a media industry, it is run by people. And these individuals definitely have biases. They have things that they believe in. Could that be one of the challenges that we have? Because now, especially in a very political country like we are in, it comes out in the reporting or in the context that is put based on somebody's bias. Absolutely.
I think that is where we need to be alert. And that's where the management and the leadership of the media has to be quite alert to make sure that the final product that goes on does not carry the biases of the individual that brought that report together. And I think it is important to be alert in the sense, I don't know what controls or what management, editorial controls are there, because sometimes you read in the newspapers raw, unfiltered information that could have consequences, both for individuals. For example, it would be very quick to say, so-and-so is very corrupt. And when you read the report, it doesn't give you any indication to justify that headline. For example, the sources. Sometimes it could be just one source. Sometimes, in most of the cases, it is anonymous sources.
All right.
And therefore, it damages that particular person. It damages the community and the family of that person. And if it is an institution, it damages that institution. And the more we hammer on these stories without providing information, the more we damage our institutions and the confidence we have in those institutions as a people.
All right. Julie, how difficult is it for you as a journalist to be balanced or to be biased? I mean, to be neutral?
It's extremely difficult, and I think last year showed all of us that it's very hard to stay, let's just call it objective, especially when you think that what you're presenting is the truth. So you're trying to weigh between neutrality and truth, and in your mind, truth always wins out, but people have personal truths. So it's a constant journey of trying to walk a thin line to give both sides of the story. And it's not just giving both sides of the story, but it's not just presenting them like that, but it's trying to remove yourself from the reportage and remove your thoughts and your emotions about what is happening. So last night, I think, like I said before, it proved to everybody in every media house that some things are so emotive that you put yourself before your profession. But just to respond to the other people on the panel, I'm very interested in how and why. I'm not just interested in what, when, and where. And I'm interested in the media presenting all sides of the story and explaining things in the context of why they happen. What I'm not advocating for is the media taking a stand and saying we are preaching peace or we are preaching unity, because I don't think that is our place. Our place is to present the arguments, even to analyze those arguments, and let the people who are consuming that news to take their own decisions from there. And Koki mentioned the elephant, and also Quartz, also the Conversation Africa, where they analyze the news. They do analyze it, but they don't take positions and say, this is what you must do, because this is what you have said. Yes. You present all that you have, what you think, how you think things should go, but I don't think it is the place of the media to take a stand and use their platform to influence people to such an extent that they now take on your...
Then that's what we're saying. We are saying that.
I kind of think that... you are placing the media outside the perimeters of the public. The media is part of the public. The media is part of Kenya, Africa, the world.
Yes,
it cannot simply be... the media organizations must report, as you said, factually, fairly, in a balanced manner in their reporting. But they do take position. Media is a very powerful instrument. It's a very powerful tool in influencing and directing. Yes, and directing. So unity is not. Unity is a great element to aspire for. It is not a dividing factor. If we were advocating here that the media should be used to divide the community, to take sides on political issues, to take side on national issues, I would disagree, and I'll say that the media should not be played. But national unity is something that we should aspire for, and there is absolutely nothing wrong in the media promoting national unity editorially. And in its opinion.
All right, let me hear from Robi.
Okay, I have two things to say. You know, academics think differently. I think that if you go back to what the core issue about media is over the times, you have the element of social responsibility. And social responsibility calls for the media, not ideally to say, no, this is what we are championing, no, but present you know, present ideology. Because look at it critically. When you look at the Kenya Audience Research Foundation report, they say that 94% of Kenyans, at least last year, believe or acquire their information from traditional media, not even social media, okay? So if 94% of people actually pay attention to what you're saying, then the media has an onus to tell people, not directly to like kind of tell them what to think, all right? But what to think about.
And the question, I think that the line that Julie is trying to draw here is at what point you can present the facts, but you're not trying to say these are the facts, therefore.
But nobody's saying that. No, none of us is saying that.
But the media is an important instrument in modernization, in development, in progress. In better understanding between people. It is part of the media to promote development and progress, as well as unity. Because by development and by promoting what is good.
My question is, who decides what is good?
Yes.
Yeah,
and therefore, we are pushing what is good because we have all agreed that
we all understand there is no disagreement on what is good.
There's so much disagreement on what is good.
There is need for...
better roads, better health, better education,
and in terms of national unity, let us take Kenya as an example, because we are in an environment that is somehow unique. And looking at the elections that we had and the fact that we had a very divided nation, let's take, for instance, the handshake as it is right now. Once the handshake was done, temperatures came down. That is directly attributed to the leaders who did that. But what role do we then take after that? Is it just reporting and saying, okay, there was a handshake, we do not know what was the, framework of the handshake, but here we are today, and then leave it at that?
It's a bit minimalist for the media to say that the handshake brought temperatures down. What temperatures? You've not interrogated what the temperatures were. You have not picked out the elements that were very important at that point in time. We all know that during the elections, a lot of animosity was driven by propaganda. You know that. And we had an opportunity to disparage propaganda as it came along. Just like if you're discussing a constitutional issue, you can take a position and put out the constitution, have panelists here talk about the different side, and have your editorial position too. So in that manner, you're basically telling us, yeah, this is what it is, but in our understanding, from our research, okay? Because you are expected in modern times. And if you look at modern journalism, it's not just about what, where, and all. It's more about, okay, this is our research, this is our tech. You have the resources with you. You have the African fact finders and etc.
All right, so Mheshimiwa, are you saying then that the media has a role to influence how people possibly view things, and as a result, foster national unity?
No, I wouldn't say that the media is an influencer. There is no argument.
There's no debate about it.
The media should take responsibility for what it reports. If, for example, a report is likely to show that, in fact, it will create divisions and conflict in our society,
despite the fact that it might be factual or true.
But you know, this idea of factual, there are a lot of factual things. There are a lot of positive things that are happening in our society. Does the media cover it? The media is selective. It is selective on the basis of what sells, what is hot, what is controversial. The question is, in a fragile society, in a fragile environment like ours, and you saw that during the election, is it right to be pushing for more division, for more differences, rather than reflecting what brings us together, the common things that we share as a community, the positive things?
So does that mean then we filter?
Of course, you filter all the time.
Don't you?
Yes.
I mean, that's why you have the gatekeeping process.
How many stories do you have on your list today, and how many of them would be running in the headlines?
Yes, and by filtering,
a minority.
And what I'm driving to, Robi, is what Julie brought about earlier on, and this is the fact that we have a responsibility. We certainly have a responsibility. We as a media do have influence. So where do we draw the line when we are reporting fact when we're reporting things on the ground, when we report, or even images that we present
for
out
example,
there.
when you're reporting on controversial things, sensitive things, you must cover both sides. You must look at all the sides of the story.
Be objective.
Sometimes you run with one side of it, and you continue to emphasize and amplify to the point that you believe that there's nothing else to that story. And I think that is where the danger comes from. Fairness, balance, but also the professionalism to say, is this other side covered? Okay. And I can give you, for example, a minor example. When I have been covered in the media quite a number of times on issues relating to the elections, for example. And the reporter puts a lot of things relating to issues that are directly affecting me as a person. But there is no attempt on the part of that journalist to pick up the phone and call me to comment on the story. None at all. It is if there's no ethical, there's no professionalism, and there are many stories of that kind that are erroneous, and that could mislead the public. This is just a minor example. There are bigger examples that I can cite on a national issue. Is that
yeah, we can locate where the ethical decision-making is. You all know that as a journalist, it is right what Julie says. You go down, get your facts, send the story, then it goes through the gatekeeping process. And when it gets to the editorial bit of it, that is where the ethical decisions need to be made initially. And that is where they have to make sure that the story, like he said, has been acquired from different sources. Different sources will give a different perspective, and therefore, at the end of the day, you have a well-cooked story that is more or less not just telling us what happened, but giving us something to think about. If this is what happened, this is what happened, then we draw logical conclusions. But here we are. It is now 2017. The last election was in October. I don't think there's been any discourse about the implications of what happened last year. A drawback into, I look back into the historical memory we have around elections and the things that occur every other time. And therefore, when do we start as the media talking about these things? Because again, remember what the media does. You create a consciousness. Yeah, you create a psyche. And that's important to interrogate. You can take time as the media to say, all right, we will tell the stories as they happen every day, but then remember what the implications are. Then let's tell these stories that, give more value to what has happened.
All right, we'll still need to wind up. But Julie, let me start with the fact that where we are today as a country, would this be the right time to be interrogating, like Koki says, some of the historical issues that we have? Because we seem to bring them up when things are at boiling point, which might not be the right time to deal with some of those things. Should this be the time now we're talking about historical injustices when there is a somewhat, let's call it a sober mood in the country?
Yeah, definitely. And I do think that, I think we should expand the definition of media. It's beyond the traditional legacy media. Social media is part of it, citizen journalism, people are content creators all over the place. There are websites like Quartz, like she mentioned, The Elephant. People have we've become a very media-driven society because there are so many outlets for how we think and how we feel and for the facts and everything else. But I do think we need to interrogate these issues all the time, not just at election time, not just at times when we think that things have tensions have gone down and all the how we describe our society. But we need to always look back to the past to understand the present and to predict the future. Things like the handshake, things like different communities coming together, making alliances, the cycle of how there are no permanent enemies in the land of politics. Things are always cyclical. Clashes and political violence is also cyclical. Tribal alliances are also cyclical. So we can't just consume the news in the present day without looking back. Okay. And these are things that we should be thinking about all the time and reflecting upon all the time. And that's where also the media, all outlets of media have a place in terms of that analysis, in terms of bringing back to people's consciousness and memory things that happened before. But I still say that we should present it now to the people and let them decide what they're going to take away from it.
All right, Mheshimiwa, one of the biggest catalysts of national unity, or the lack of it, is politicians. And you've had a bit of both worlds, as a journalist, but also as a politician. What would your advice be to our media houses, given that we do know the politicians that we have sometimes are very good at spinning stories and propaganda, and that does not work for us as a country?
I absolutely agree that, in fact, the media also needs to be a gatekeeper, in the sense that, in fact, you should be able to measure the content that is coming out from our society, including politicians, and to a certain extent, determine whether, because you're giving some of those people a platform to express whatever incitement, whatever what agenda they want to say. And I think the media does have a role to sort of manage that, because if you're not giving them the space, the oxygen, as
they would die,
as it were.
They would suffocate.
Yeah, they would suffocate.
Right.
And I think that is the biggest problem I have with the media, given the fact that it can give a microphone to every person who wants to say whatever he wants, regardless of the consequences. I think the media has a responsibility. Politicians also have a responsibility. All right. To be able to take care of our fragile state, our fragile country. And I think I would like to say that we need to go beyond the handshake. The handshake was a very good beginning. It created an opportunity for us. I think the media needs, and all of us, I think, should look at how we can make that handshake more meaningful.
What is beyond the handshake? When you say let's go beyond the handshake, what exactly do you mean?
Well, to look at what kind of Kenya do we want? Where do we want to go from here after our experience of the 2017 elections? What kind of a country we want to create? What problems do we need to address that have dogged us and bedeviled us? And where do we need to go? I mean, Kenya is a very vibrant, developing country. We have a lot of potential with peace, unity, and stability. We can be the next big thing in our continent, in the world. But we need to address the elephant in the house, in the room, and move forward. It's not, you know, President Uhuru and Honorable Raila did us a great favor by shaking hands. We also have responsibilities now as Kenyans to create space to move forward to a better society.
All right, Robi?
Yeah, I think our role in media is to make people alert and know that they have a responsibility, like he says, to voice their concerns. Because again, the politician has to be checked. The politician will be checked by an informed Kenyan. The politician will be checked by that informed Kenyan through the media, who basically understands things to the core and who can give context to what is happening. And some of the places maybe we should start after the handshake is to question things like violence, to question things like propaganda, to question things like governance. You know, what are people doing about governance? To question about our participation, to remove us from being passive into active audiences. And I think those are some of the places where we can start to drive this agenda.
All right, Mheshimiwa, you want
I
to add
also
something?
wanted to emphasize one point which I see was very clear in the elections, and even now. Is it right for the media to give a platform to a politician, an activist who is preaching violence? Is it right for the media to give a platform and amplify the voice of an inciter? Is it right for the media to give a platform to a person who uses ethnic division in our country as a platform for their own activism or this politics of pushing resentment and anger to the point of destruction? That is the question I'll be asking the media managers. Is it right for us to be giving them a voice
a platform to preach their divisive politics and all that. Indeed. All right, and maybe as we wind up, Julie, your thoughts on what you'd like to see us do as the media between now. I mean, we're already almost giving platform to 2022 politics, whereas we have issues that we've not sorted out. Are we going to end up in 2022 and again we have the same problems playing out, yet we had the opportunity to at least say something about them?
Right. I think we should definitely use the platform to switch the focus from 2022 because it's become too much. We've just come through 2 elections in 1 year and we're already thinking about the next one.
How do we do that? Because you mentioned what to do. We report. So if the politicians go out there and all they're talking about is 2022 and who their man is, then really all they're doing is reporting.
I'm going to contradict myself here and say that. I'm going to contradict myself and say that this is one instance where we don't need to be thinking about 2022. We need to be thinking about the space in between and what these politicians are going to be doing for the populace and for the citizenry. Because talking about 2022 is so premature and it's taking up so much airspace and it's not adding any value, in my opinion, for the people of this country.
So do we switch off their microphones or how do we call them out?
I think yes, you can switch off their microphones or listen to what they say and put everything that they say into context. For everything that they say about 2022, what about 2018? What is your plan for next week and next month? Even as you're talking about this, what about this stretch of time in between here when we have elected you to provide us with services? So this is where all the analysis, the context, the history, the reflection comes into place with every single news item that goes out there. It's no longer just the news. Now, we're not preaching anything, but we're putting everything into a context. So when people consume this news, as people are talking about whatever the alliances that people are building, even the handshake, what does that mean for you today? So that's what I mean by switching the focus.
Switching the focus. Yes. All right, Mheshimiwa, your closing comments and also what you envision. And I don't know whether you're in 2022 politics already. As a politicians, we have most of them just telling us about their plans for 2022. Yet we've not seen what they have done with their term.
No, I want to tell you what I'm doing now for the people of Kamkunji in terms of helping them to overcome the challenges that they have. I would say if I was a journalist and a politician told me what they wanted to do 2022, I'll ask them, what are you doing now? Because you have been, I was just elected. I'm going to put a lot of my emphasis and energy onto fulfilling the mandate that have been given by the people of Kamkunji until 2022. So I think to a certain extent there are times when I have been invited journalists for an event in my constituency, and I'm talking about development, about schools, about health.
What you're doing now.
And they would tell you, no, Mheshimiwa, our editors tell us that is not going to make the news. Tell us your position on 2022. You know, it is the media that is setting the agenda of 2022 because it is a popular thing.
The politicians are setting the agenda, the media is covering.
Okay, Robin, your closing comments.
Globally, you should know the media, mainstream media, is being fought and is being challenged by other voices. You should just be aware of that. Be it social media, be it media houses on social media platforms. So basically what we are saying, traditional media needs to style up. And styling up means, and I've said it severally, change the business model, sell content. The other thing I've said severally, change the follow-up stories, tell people. Like she says, this the politician today is saying this, last year he said that, and etc. There's a research I was doing on God on the ballot, and just realizing that I think Raila was referred to as Joshua some several years back, and he still is. So we need that back and forth. That back and forth gives us context. That back and forth helps us see the broader picture. And if media focuses on that, then we don't need to run to other sources to just get what you are in the profession to do.
All right, thank you very much. Robi Koki there, who's a lecturer at USIU, Communication and Journalism. Honorable Yusuf Hassan, Member of Parliament for Kamkunji. And last but not least, Jullie Masiga, who's a journalist. Thank you for joining us in the newsroom today.